Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Ask the Expert webinar. I'm Tracy Zatinik, Marketing Manager at Amplifi. I want to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Utilizing GDSN with Salsify. As you know, when registering for this webinar, you had the option to pre-submit questions, which we will be answering today. During the presentation, you also have the ability to submit questions through the Q&A feature. Questions will be answered at the end or will be followed up on by email. As always, this session is being recorded and you can expect an email from us in the coming days with your link to the video, or you can locate it on our website at goamplify.com. Without further ado, let's get to know our experts. First up, we have Ametra Tipton. Ametra is the Salsify practice lead here at Amplifi with years of experience working in the MDM space. Ametra is responsible for diving into new technology platforms to not only understand feature functions, but also how to solve client use cases, leveraging new partnerships, as well as the internal enablement of delivery and sales of our new platforms. Up next, we have JP Graves. JP is a solution consultant that has been with the Amplifi for over a year and has worked with nearly a dozen Salsify clients to help ensure successful adoption of the Salsify platform and implement a solution for every client's unique needs. Lastly, we have John. I'm sorry, John, I didn't get your last name. Can you pronounce it for me?
Apicella.
Apicella, product manager leading GDSN program at Salsify. With roughly 6 years of experience in the GDSN and e-commerce space, John got his start at Salsify in 2015, initially on the implementation side of the customer success team, before eventually transitioning to product to focus on connections and ultimately leading the build out, launch, and adoption of the Salsify's GS1 certified GDSN data pool. That's awesome, guys. All right, without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Ametra so that she can tell us what we're talking about today.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Tracy. So today we are going to cover quite a few things, obviously, around GDSN. We're going to kick things off by actually covering what is GDSN and why this topic is so important to both our Amplifi customers and our Salsify customers, and of course, everyone on the line. We also want to hit some points around some of the challenges that we observe when it comes to implementing new GDSN solutions or even keeping up with those ever-changing and vast GS1 requirements. And then to tackle that, we want to give some insight and some useful tips to our audience today around your readiness and being prepared to take on a new GDSN initiative. And then, of course, with John, our partner from Salsify on the line, we want to talk about some of the cool features and obviously awesome functionality that Salsify brings to the table to support GDSN. And then we'll close with JP actually getting into the tool and showing us what it looks like, a lot of that functionality and the useful resources that the platform does offer around GDSN. So with that being said, John, when we were planning for the webinar, of course, we have years of experience. We've done a lot of these implementations and worked with a lot of different manufacturers to get their data syndicated on the network for GDSN. But we wanted to obviously start by sharing what is GDSN, quick history and high points that I know you definitely wanted to share with the group today.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Ametra. Thank you, Amplifi team, for having me on the webinar today. And hello, folks. Excited to talk about GDSN today. For those of you both familiar and unfamiliar, I'd like to start with a brief history. Talk about the GDSN, where it started, and most importantly, how it's evolved to fit in today's world, and what we're seeing across the commerce landscape with suppliers and where the GDSN is fitting in. So, the GDSN, it's a technology standard. It's been in use for roughly 15 years. It's traditionally used to connect trading partners, sending and receiving content, the content necessary to fuel the global supply chain. It's been most heavily adopted in categories and industries like fast-moving consumer goods, grocery retail, food service, hard lines, things like that. So typically areas where suppliers have goods on many shelves and recipients have many suppliers that they receive items for. So the GDSN itself, what it is it's a network of interoperable data pools that all agree to communicate on a shared standard. So same set of pipes, same schema, same attributes. And this ensures that participating trading partners have a secure, timely, and accurate means to send and receive content. So, it helps drive efficiencies in warehouse delivery and receipt, inventory demand planning. That's just to name a few, right? So from the early 2000s to the 2010s, into the 2010s, the technology was great. It was heavily adopted. It was just what everyone needed. And that was true until around the time where every consumer on the planet, for the most part, swapped that brick cell phone with buttons on it in their purse or pocket for a portable touchscreen supercomputer, the iPhones, the Androids. So what we saw from that was a growing trend in online commerce, right? So as consumers shifted from shopping and purchasing in store to shopping and purchasing online or wherever they are, or some crazy hybrid of the two, right? Like BOPIS. Retailers had a new place that they needed to meet their consumer on the product detail page, that lives on the digital aisle on their online marketplace. And in reaction to this, suppliers started to see demands from their trading partners for consumer-facing content, which was, previously relegated to just the physical package and television advertising. So what we saw there was that the GDSN data providers were either too slow to meet that challenge just to help their brand supply consumer-facing content, or they chose an alternative strategy, right? And that was building technologies outside of the GDSN to support consumer-facing data for their recipients, and they charge for it. So this led to a great fragmentation. So not great as in a positive, but like a vast fragmentation. GDSN data pool providers became entrenched in their specialized market, industry, or with their set of retailers that they have exclusive relationships with. E-commerce teams, digital teams, marketing teams were born, started owning content, hunted for technologies to support their needs. By the way, this is the original opportunity Salsify launched from. And master data supply and IT teams continue to own the physical supply chain, which fuels GDSN. So now we're all starting to kind of feel the pain of these physical and digital worlds colliding, right? And it's a pain directly caused by the operational and functional silos within your organizations. So retailers like Amazon, Walmart, they're early movers in consolidating their category and merchant buying teams for in-store and online into one unified front, as well as their physical and digital supply chain functions all into one functional unit. Right, so more and more we're seeing requests to master data teams to supply consumer-facing content through the GDSN. And on the other end, we're seeing more and more requests to the digital teams owning online marketplace content submission to supply information about physical shipping configurations. But the silos we've built in response to the old ways of working are preventing our customers and brands like yourself from responding to these seismic shifts in content submission. Right, so in order to win today, this is wrapping up here. In order to win today in this world of commerce, supply chain teams, digital marketing teams, you need to be nimble to evolving requests and demands from your retailers, no matter which way they are requesting it. You need to break down the silos that separate your functional units, right? So, and you also have to have technology to fuel that change in process, cross-functional collaboration, and content necessary to win on the digital shelf. So that's why we built a native GS1 certified GDSN data pool. We fully integrated it with Salsify's core platform, and our key focus has been on simplicity, visibility, and actionability. Right? Our drive has been, and will continue to be, to make the GDSN solution approachable to the business user, and also a breath of fresh air to the GDSN expert who's been using other tools to date. So that I might have gone on too long, but it's a little bit of a history. It's a little bit of how we've evolved, and why we've built a data pool and integrated with our platform.
No, that's all really good information. Thank you so much, John, for sharing that. That was awesome. A couple of things that I do want to pull out of what John just talked about, right? Obviously, calling out the different personnel within your organization that really needs to be involved to support a GDSN solution, at least an efficient one that you're going to gain benefits from, just leans itself, obviously, to our mantra with implementations, right? Is that there are elements, people, processes, and technology that are going to make a successful solution. So, of course, we're going to cover the technology piece a little later in our webinar, but I think the people and processes elements that we encounter during the implementations are some of the challenges that I do want to walk through with the JP, right? To really understand, once we're boots on the ground with our services, what are we encountering that may be potential blockers, right? Because obviously the urgency at which we encounter some of our engagements that need to get their items out to their trading partners, right? Get the correct data out there, launch those new products. It tends to be extremely important. So when we get into an implementation and we're running up against things that may not have been flagged early or that, we need to educate the customer on, we definitely want to treat those as lessons learned and share those with the group. So I do want to pose a question to you, JP, around your experience with implementations, right? Maybe we can start specifically around some of the process changes that we encounter when we're rolling out new GDSN solutions. Do you have a few that maybe you could share with the audience today?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for having me on. I'm excited to talk about GDSN today. And so, hello, everyone. But no, what I want to talk about for kind of the challenges that I've faced while working on projects involve GDSN is kind of like Ametra referenced or reference to is the readiness of the customer, right? A lot of customers would have the, not all levels of the packaging hierarchy set up. And what I mean by that is that if a customer comes into a project and they have their eaches set up, right, that can be a blocker for GDSN, success and publishes because you need those next level, because it may not be a trade item, right? And so what that means is that, there can be a blocker that, for within the GDSN pool upon publication, or for actually syndicating with the retailer through GDSN. Another one is simply just the readiness around your GLNs, right? What GLN are you going to be seeing? Like, what's the GLN of the retailer that you're going to be syndicating through to the GDSN? Another one is, not just the retailers of the GLNs of the retailers, but your actual own GLN. I know that for most people that is a known thing. You'll know your own GLN. But just to be, when you're kind of net new to GDSN, to ensure that you know what your GLN is, that is pretty important because, if you have the wrong GLN, that can be a blocker on that. And I have experienced that with a couple clients. And then another one is not knowing what attributes are needed for the retailer. And I know that can be one that we work through with you, as a solution consultant. I would, ensure that we get that data, as we're going through the publishing process. But a lot of the times, if you don't know, certain attributes like, what are the dimensions of the packaging, things of that nature, just being ready from a attribution standpoint, right? And that can be a blocker if you're not, perfectly in sync with what is needed. And even though you may have all the GTINs set up and you're ready to go with the GLNs, if you don't have the appropriate attributions, that can be a delay in the setup. But your success would still come. It just would be a delay in the process. We want you to be as quick as possible, as many of these retailers are. They want their data as quickly as possible. So when we don't want any delays, and that's those are a few challenges that I've faced. And again, Salsify, through all of the feedback and everything that I'll show you within the tool, really kind of helps work through all those challenges you face. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it for like the ones that I've faced. Ametra, I'm sure you've kind of faced similar ones as well, or?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that you did say, JP, there that I wanted to kind of tie back to the intro that we got from John is around the resources that we work with on these actual engagements, right? So a lot of the times, if we are working with some folks that are further downstream, so we're talking about the e-commerce and the digital teams, they might not be privy to or have insight into the upfront work that goes into building out an actual packaging hierarchy, right? I do think at times having the right people engaged on these implementations is obviously critical. So to JP's point, if we've established your use for the Salsify platform to utilize G10s, and we have those consumer facing eaches, to his point, only in the system, and we of course get to the point where we need to have the cases, right, for that each. We need to know about the pallet information and all of that logistics data. That's when those silos, to John's point, can obviously become an issue, right? Whereas we're pushing forward to get all of that information centralized in a tool like Salsify, we do need to pull in those other groups so we can get a big picture understanding of what it really means to utilize GDSN to get all of your data out there on the network. So that was definitely one thing, JP, when you said that, that stood out to me. Another thing was specific around the requirements for each of the trading partners. I don't think we can underestimate some of the expectations of the bigger retailers if we're thinking about the Lowe's and the Home Depots and the Walmarts, of course. And sure, there's going to be that core and global data, but there are probably going to be some nuances and slight differences for each of those retailers. And speaking from experience similar to you, JP, I do learn that having that conversation early and upfront with the customer project resources around, have we actually gotten the requirements per the retailer, right? So what are they saying for their trading partners needs to be done to get their data properly published and for them to receive that information. So I do think those are all critical elements. Of course, I would be amiss if I didn't point out the need to nurture those relationships as well, right? Because a lot of those conversations are happening before they're engaged with myself or a JP, right? Or even maybe making a decision on what tool they want to utilize for their GDSN solution. A lot of it is going to be planning. And making that transition and making sure that you have all the information up front. So to JP's point, when you are actually ready to publish and there's an expectation that the recipient of that product information gets it in a timely manner, we don't want to have any issues or red flags there. But I did, of course, want to pause there. And obviously, John, JP and I have shared a couple of thoughts, but I definitely wanted to get your insight. I know you're working closely with customers fairly early on when they get into their decision-making process to go down this path, right, for a new GDSN solution with Salsify. Did you have any thoughts that you commonly come across as far as potential challenges?
Yeah, I think you both have touched on a lot of what I've seen. If I could kind of put a wrapper around it all, right? There's this high level, this is not just a data project, right? This is about change management. So it's about working internally to get all of your stakeholders that touch content together and engaged and involved early, right? Even before if you're switching GDSN solution providers, even before you decide to make the switch, right? You should get everybody involved up to speed. And that's both from the leaders all the way down to the practitioners on both ends. Having a realistic grasp on the current quality of your data is important, and how that relates to, the trading partner needs, right? Because every trading partner, there's core content in the GDSN, 80% of it is all the same, and it's all, all the retailers want it. But the GDSN schema is vast, right? It is thousands of attributes wide. And each retailer has their set of, core attributes and then some differentiated attributes that they want. So really having an understanding of what your retailers want up front, and how your data meets that quality expectation that the retailer might have, or the recipient, or the distributor, whatever you might call them. And then as we start to step down through the funnel, right, there is the making sure that everyone that we've gathered together, a stakeholder in this project, is at least familiar with the language, right? The G10s, the packaging hierarchies. What is GDSN actually doing for your business, right? It's fueling the supply chain revenue, like the physical supply chain revenue, right? GDSN is the backbone to, e-commerce is growing, but it's still 80 to 90% of your bottom line. So, getting everyone up to speed with what the GDSN is, the business impact it has, and the language around it, right? Company identifiers, packaging hierarchies, what GTIMs are called, and how they stack together. I think that's all critical, right? You need to work down through the process. You need to get everyone involved. You need to align on what your retailers need, where you stand against that, and then start to align everybody on the language. And then you can start to work with an Amplifi to build out what that actual migration project and implementation project looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, obviously, a lot of things to make sure are in line, to John's point, prior to engaging for an implementation, right, and services. So as we transition into our next topic, of course, as we were planning this, I told John, I definitely want us to talk through why Salsify for GDSN. And as Tracy kicked us off with the intros and shared a bit about my background, being pretty much all of my professional career in MDM. So I have been exposed to some other solutions. And I definitely would want to prime the group for, obviously what JP is going to show for some of the attendees that haven't seen the GDSN solution within Salsify, is definitely the ease of use, right? So I know we're talking about a lot of these different concepts and using a lot of terms. And it is just as complicated once you dive into some of that data, right? Because to John's point, that GS1 schema is extremely vast and there are literally thousands of attributes, right? And understanding how your data fits into that and what's necessary to support your business is pretty critical. But a few points that I do want to just call out after, seeing other tools and how they approach GDSN is number one, kind of the digestible data modeling, right, within Salsify. And I know that JP is going to get into this a bit, but actually being able to take a look at your full packaging hierarchy, right, within the tool, being able to have those relationships when we talk about the different structures. And obviously, that is what's going to set the foundation for actually getting it in there, focusing on the quality of your data and making sure that it is presentable in a way, number one, for you to continue to manage it. I have seen some cases where with bad modeling, it becomes so convoluted that some customers don't even know how to update data and it's no longer efficient, right? So that's one thing I know we're going to get into that I definitely wanted to call out there. And then obviously the actual framework for syndicating to the network. I think what Salsify has built is absolutely fantastic. We'll get into some really cool features they have around GLIN groups, right? So different ways to organize your trading partners and manage those syndication processes that way. And then of course, obviously insight into that choreography. So anyone in the audience that actually has experience with GDSN and syndicating your data, you know that there is a lot of synchronization in terms of messaging, right? And understanding if there were any issues caught by the retailers and what needs to be adjusted. And obviously when it comes to data management, having that kind of traceability is very important. So those are a couple of high points I wanted to hit. Of course, I'm going to kick it back to John so he can hit a few before we dive into the tool with JP.
Yeah, thanks, Ametra. I guess what I would say about, our investment to date in Salsify, again, I said it earlier, our focus is on simplicity, visibility, actionability. We see a macro trend in content shifting from being, historically something that's owned by master data, IT, supply chain, for better or for worse, to, something that's becoming more and more owned by, marketing, digital, e-commerce teams. I think the E is going away before we know it. It's all commerce now. So, since the GDSN is a pretty complex technology, our focus is on to make it, again, approachable to the business user, and something that solves a lot of the problems that the GDSN practitioners the hundreds we've spoken to over the last 2 years in building our data pool and continuing to invest have raised with the way the GDSN works today. So trying to simplify, trying to give more visibility, make it more actionable. At the higher level, we've been in this space for years. We have a lot of experience working with customers, both in-store solutions and online commerce solutions. And our goal with a GDSN data pool plus CommerceXM offering, is to help brands unify their in-store and online people, process, content, tech stack, right? So, ensuring our customers are future-proofed against the evolving commerce landscape. So that's what we've attempted to do here. It's what we're going to continue investing in from a GDSN front in Salsify. A lot more exciting things coming down the pipe. But I'm happy to pass it off back to the Amplifi team and JP for a quick demo.
All right, JP, go ahead and get going, and we'll take a look at the actual Salsify platform.
All right, guys, now time for the fun part. You get to see the tool, or at least for me. I'm excited. But no, today I'm going to be showing you kind of some dummy data for the GDSN channel and for the tool, and just kind of want to show you what we're starting with. Probably if you're familiar with Salsify at all, maybe not with so much the GDSN channel portion of it, you'll recognize this immediately. In order to kind of access that GDSN channel, it's the same as any other syndication channel within Salsify. You would just go through here to the channels, drop down, and just like a channel, right? Just like any other retailer, you can add it in here once you've gotten with your solution consultant, and they've put in a ticket to add that channel, right? It would be a GDSN drop down, and that would create that GDSN channel for it. So we already have one set up for you guys, and we want to click into this here, right? And what you'll immediately notice is, again, if you're familiar with the channels, it looks very similar to the retailer syndication channels. And again, in the same way that those syndication channels have the kind of ease of use, you will immediately notice this is very just user-friendly in how you approach the channel. You immediately are met with the overview of all your publishes, the feedback that goes with those publishes, right? And what we'll want to do next is we want to kind of look through the products page and how you select those products. The way I've selected it here is simply just, any product that has any value for GTIN, right? So simply it just pulls through all products that are ready for syndication to GDSN because they have a GTIN set up currently. Now, that may not be the case from, user to user, right? From client to client, but this is kind of a way that I was able to pull in the GTINs in order to set up and kind of get this channel going. There's also, you can create a list of what you'd want to publish to GTIN, to the GDSN channel. And there's just a couple ways you can do this. But again, this is pretty standard for, if you're familiar with Salsify, the Salsify channels. And, but even not, this is just kind of a simple overview of how you select product for the GDSN channel. Now, on to the next tab again, is the readiness tab, and that shows you the readiness for the GDSN channel. Again, for those familiar with the for the syndication channels and for similar retailer channels, this looks probably very familiar. You'll notice that there are attributes with these asterisks, right? These are the fields that are required. Again, they'll be what you need to be filled out, and those are kind of the core most important attributes to send to a retailer. But as John and Ametra have mentioned, certain attributes may be needed for the different retailers you're working with. It depends on who you're going to be syndicating to. And something that Salsify has to kind of help you along with, selecting the proper attributes in order to make sure that you're successful here is you have a schema selector. And what we have set currently is just core for this GDSN dummy data, right? And what you can do is you can select a different type of schema, and that will change what what attributes are selected. So again, if you're syndicating to Amazon, right, you can select that schema. And of course, you would work with your solution consultant to set that up. And that will just ensure that as many attributes as possible are identified for what you need to send through to the retailer. And again, you will receive feedback depending on if you're, there's any attributes missing for that retailer and for that syndication. And we'll get to how that feedback looks here in a second when we get to the sync report and item report. But this is kind of just an overview of that readiness report. And, once all your products are ready, you're at 100%. What you would do is you would go to publish, just simple as that. You're mapped, you're ready, and you go to publish. And you would publish here, right? And it would say all 11 products are ready for GDSN, right? You then click publish, and that would then send through, and you would get a item report here, which we'll click into. And you'll notice that you get feedback around this. Remember that, keep in mind that this is dummy data, and this is just simply for display on this sort of demo so that we can show you how this feedback would look, right? So we have a validation status. We have the G10s listed here. What is the GS1 registration status, right? And as the user, you'll have the ability to filter, right? These what the statuses are. To validated, needs validation, validation failed, right? You can filter to these different, what that validation status is, right? You can also filter to the target market in the same way, United States or Canada, and then also filter on the GS1 registration, registered, pending, rejected, and new. And then also just another nice filter was like, when was this last updated? So if you have a real long list and you want to go back to a publish that has happened a couple months ago, you can simply just access it here and do last 60 days or something like that. Another thing is that you can download a report here, right? And so if you want to simply, again, if it needs validation, right? Or excuse me, validation failed, right? And you want to download this report, you would just simply click here and that would download the report for you to access and to have that available to you, the consumer. Another thing that, with GDSN, the GDSN tool is the ability to schedule these publishes, right? And so you can click here to enable this publication schedule, and you can set it to a daily schedule, right? Weekly, monthly, set the time, and then set the time zone as well. There's plenty of kind of ways that you can set this, publication here through this publication schedule. Another thing you can do is set notifications, right? So if you want to send notifications to anyone on a successful publication, all you would do is select this, and then whatever whoever you wanted to send to on a successful publication, you can add them here. The same goes for on a failed publication, a successful publication, or a failed publication. Excuse me, you can call webhook. Sorry, I kind of repeated myself here. But anyways, that's basically it for the notifications. And then, so you probably noticed that there's also this thing called a sync report, right? And what that is, it's around how when you go to publish and you synchronize with the retailers, what is the feedback that you receive on these different GTINs from the retailer, right? And just as before, there's different ways you can filter through this, right? You have the, you can filter on the target partner GLN, the trading partner target market, and just like before, the sync status as well. And just as before, you can download the report on this. So again, if you have some products that need to be reviewed, you can filter to the reviewed sync status and download the reports that's associated with those products. Another thing is that, again, this is what would show up after you do a synchronized publish. And what we had done before was simply a publish to the GDSN data pool, but I want to show you what it looks like when you publish and synchronize with a retailer, right? So once you've published, to the GDSN data pool, the next thing you want to do is publish and synchronize with the retailer. Once you've published, you'll get feedback for that publish here, right, for the GDSN data pool. You will click into it, and in this one, again, because it's dummy data, our feedback is going to be around the GLN not accepting from this demo environment, and that's okay. But say we were to fix the feedback, right, and simply, whatever the feedback was, if we were to go in and fix the feedback here, we would then run a publish again, but this time, what you'll see is a new screen which has the operation load and a dry run and Salsify support flags. So this load is what we did on that first publish, which was just simply loading into the GDSN data pool. And then the other option is to sync, which is to synchronize with the retailer, the GDSN retailer. So what you'll do is you'll select the GDSN, you'll select the destination GLNs. And what you'll notice is that there is these custom GLN groups. And essentially, and I'll show you in a little more detail here in a second what these are, but what essentially these are these are groups of GLNs grouped on, the Canada market, food service, French supermarkets, right? And so they're just different groups for different regions or different however you want to associate these GLNs, you can group them together. And if you select this GLN group, you would be able to publish to this group of GLNs. You can also select individually, depending on if you want just a publish channel for a single retailer and you want to publish, just say straight to Acme or something like that, you can select them here, right? And again, you can add more just like with selecting the GLN groups. And if you were publishing to add, you would simply leave add as the operation, and then delete would be your selection if you were trying to get rid of a synchronization to a retailer. And then here you have the new and initial load. And what new is it's for products that are brand new to a trading partner, right? And initial load is for products already in the trading partner's catalog. So if they already exist within the retailer, you would choose initial load for this synchronize. And what you've also probably noticed, is that this info icon that's to the left of all these different of all the different subsections, and they give you a great little overview about what each box is. So if you come away from this and you're like, what, that guy just sped through this all. I can't remember what each one was. You can come back here and it's got a great overview for the different sections, right? And so you would run and publish here. And so once you've published, and again, because we're in a sort of demo environment, we won't actually publish, but let's say we did publish, we would then head on over back to what I was showing you before, to that sync report. And this is where you would get the sync report around the GTINs that you've published to the different trading partners, right? You'll see where it's synchronized to target, and you'll get the different statuses here in the feedback. And the feedback is where where Salsify really brings in a lot of the power, and it has a lot of good stuff for the consumer, because you're immediately able to see what needs to be done on the product. Right, for this one, it's a pub sub mismatch, which means that the retailer either hasn't subscribed to that GTIN, or just simply it's a mismatch, right? A reject is that if there's if say a GTIN was missing a specific attribute that you hadn't filled out, then you would see that here. You would go and correct it and then republish. Again, you're getting that immediate feedback, or as quickly as you can feedback, and then you're able to immediately correct it and send it through. And so again, just really, this is a great tool to immediately see that feedback that you get from the retailer and begin to kind of work through any of that feedback, any of the issues that you may see. But again, just because there is errors within the data does not mean it's bad data. It just means it needs to be corrected and updated and sent through properly. Because if there was no feedback, if there was no error that was registered here, then we would just simply passing bad data to the retailer. So this allows for the user to simply see what needs to be corrected and updated within the system. And I know that another thing that I want to talk about, is the Attribute Explorer. I know that's a pretty powerful tool because just like both John and Ametra have mentioned, there's thousands of attributes. It can get pretty nasty. And so what this allows you to do is, hey, I've got feedback here that says, all right, product is missing description, corrective action needed, right? And it's like, okay, well, let me go to the Attribute Explorer and see what exactly is description, right? So you search description here, right? And then it gives you all the different, ones that have description in it. So again, description is not the best one because of the fact that a lot of these different attributes have description in the name, but you can kind of parse this down, and depending on what schema you select, it takes it from that 20 something attributes down to about 5, right? And then you can kind of get product type or product description. I need to go in and fill that out. Okay, it's not required. That's why I was able to send through. And, that's because certain retailers don't necessarily need a product description. And for, I believe that was, go back. It was Amazon. They do need that product description. So again, just would give you immediate feedback on it. Okay, it needs a description. Let me go in, find the attribute that I'm looking for, and then I can go back.
Actually, JP,
I'm sorry.
If I could cut in, actually,
yeah, absolutely.
Go back again to the Attribute Explorer.
Yeah.
So the way we built this is if you want to go fill out the product description, you can just click description, product description.
Yep. No, that's totally my bad. Yeah, John is totally right. That's a pretty awesome tool. And as you can see, I have been underutilizing it because I immediately was going back to search for it. But all you have to do is click here and it brings you right to it. So it's even better. So again, the tool, go ahead, John, sorry.
So we've also built in some information. If you were to click the actual product description column header, we've built in a lot of this context as well into these context cards that we call them. So you can see all of this rich description. You also see a card on top about why you're seeing this attribute, so if this attribute happens to be just in our core Salsify recommended plus global data model filter, but say this was a special attribute that Amazon wanted, it would show up in this top card as well. Why am I seeing this attribute? Well, you have Amazon selected and Amazon requires it. So we've tried to build in context and definitions in as many areas of the app as possible to meet your workflow.
Yeah, and that's a great call out, John. I meant to cover that as I was going through the required attributes. But yeah, I mean, you can see it in every single one of these attributes, right? It's a great, for some of these, you may not know immediately, okay, additional product identification type code, why is that here? And it gives you great overview and simple, easy to read language. And it talks you through, why are you seeing it? What is the GDSN name and like all the different, definitions that you can work through. And it makes, your work going through and making the mapping, and then even mine as a solution consultant helping you that work a lot easier, as it's just, again, ease of use, which is something that John's harped on more times than one, which is so important. What makes Salsify such a powerful tool.
And I think that, JP, that's a great transition. So we've talked a bit, obviously, about the feedback loops and being able to obviously take necessary action to correct some of the feedback that you may receive. And I know some point last year, we actually did a webinar around workflows. It wasn't in the context of GDSN specifically. It was more so around getting consumer data ready for e-commerce. But I know, John, that is something else that you guys took into account when you were building out the GDSN solution, is the ability to specify which groups should be interacting with the products based on some of that feedback, right?
Yeah. So JP, if you navigate over to the item report, as we all know, retailer requests are evolving. We've been getting more and more asks from trading partners for content that we haven't historically owned, right? The power of Salsify is that you're unifying the content and the people who own that content in different areas of your organization, right? So you'll have, maybe your master data or supply chain team is still responsible for initiating GDSN publishes and synchronizations, but maybe a marketing analyst or a digital analyst owns the marketing content that you use to map into the GDSN channel. And say you get that feedback on a publish to the network. You can always hover over this, select your task, and say, well, I don't own marketing content, right? And this is all theoretical, hypothetical, because that's not what this message says, but bear with me. And then you can select that circle A up top at the top of the task here on the sidebar, and you can go ahead and assign that task and reassign it to the appropriate user who might actually own that content that feeds that attribute in the GDSN channel. So this is, we're showing you some disparate pieces of the app, but the story we're really weaving here is the ability for you to be able to automate your information into a unified platform from your upstream systems, be it ERPs, DAMs, any other kind of manual input that marketing teams might need to do to get consumer-facing content in. And then the ability for you to set up product filters that feed a GDSN publish, right? And you can set filters that say, okay, any item that has a GTIN or it has been added to the system or has been updated in the system since the last publish, right? And you can schedule that. So you can automate your flows from your ERP into Salsify out to the GDSN network, right? So all you should be focused on is synchronizing out to your trading partners rather than manually pulling information out of your ERP, manually typing it into a portal or filling out a Fuse template spreadsheet and then uploading it into a GDSN data pool. We're trying to automate, we're trying to streamline, we're trying to unify your teams and connect everyone in your organization that deals with content. So that is, we just got a question that I'm looking at, but that's the goal here, right? And then give you as much visibility and insight into what to do when things might go wrong when you publish to a trading partner, because they might change requirements or they might be asking for something that you've never given them before.
That is all really good stuff, John. Obviously, team, as we look at some of the questions within the chat and even the ones that we received prior to, of course, Salsify does also support a connection to One World Sync for GDSN. We did not talk about that one extensively today as we were focused on the Salsify GDSN data pool solution. So any questions and follow-ups, we'll definitely address those directly for some of those things that we didn't touch on today. John, I didn't know if you wanted to mention anything specific to the solution around One World Sync, but I know that that's definitely on our radar for takeaways for the attendees as well.
Yeah, we've been in the One World Sync solution partner ecosystem for about close to 6 years now. It's only in the last 2 years or so that we decided to build and launch and certify our own GDSN data pool. And we are continuing to support the One World Sync connector because we know that, while we have a lot of confidence in our GDSN data pool solution, and it is the future for Salsify, not every brand can make the switch right now because of contract reasons with their existing provider, or maybe they're just not. It's not the right time for that kind of project. So we still are supporting that connector.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, JP, for this wonderful demo. I think you shared obviously a lot of the elements that make the GDSN solution within Salsify really fantastic, right? I think we hit a lot of points about obviously having the ability to remove some of those silos, making sure that GDSN within your organization is viewed through the lens of syndication, right? So the same way you guys treat the critical level the necessity of getting your items to .com is the same way with your trading partners, right? To get them your product information. Obviously, John gave us a great story around the connectivity and making sure that we're streamlining those processes as well. It's been a fantastic webinar. I hope that everyone got great value out of this. But with all of that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Tracy to close us out.
Yep. All right. Great, Ametra. JP, John, this was amazing content today. Thank you for coming and sharing all of your expertise with us. Well, everyone, this concludes today's webinar, but as a thank you for attending this Ask the Expert session, we are offering a complimentary one-to-one follow-up session with an expert for questions that you have around Salsify and GDSN. If you're interested in taking advantage in this one-to-one session, please respond to our follow-up email or email us directly at experts@goamplify.com, and we'll be happy to get you started. We hope that this webinar gave you the opportunity to see what Amplifi and the Salsify platform has to offer. Let's continue the conversation on how we can make your MDM initiative a success with our many data management and strategy offerings. Expect an email in the coming days that will be delivering your recording from today. And be sure to keep an eye out for more Ask the Expert sessions as we continue to be your trusted resource in the MDM space. And with that, that's all we've got. So have a great day.